But Mary Hawkins needs a husband. Otherwise, she and the child will be starving on the streets and destitute.
Then I will marry her.
I've been making Outlander videos for a long time now, and honestly I'm going to be so frustrated if Season 8 keeps dragging out this one character trend that's been going on forever. But that's not even the craziest part, because I bet most people didn't even catch that Season 7 quietly brought back a character who's been dead for ages. And get this, I actually think the most heartbreaking death in Season 8 might be the perfect setup to finally bring that character back after 8 years. Now, I know all of this talk might sound kind of random at first, but trust me, it's not. Especially if you've been following this channel for a while, it'll totally make sense. And if you're new here, just stick around till the end. I promise it'll all come together. Alright, let's dive into everything we know so far about Season 8. Over the years, Outlander has built a bit of a pattern when it comes to how it handles its characters. Separate them, throw a bunch of obstacles in their path, and then give them a big emotional reunion. It's kind of their thing. But heading into Season 8, that tried and true formula might have to take a back seat. This final season is only going to have 10 episodes, and that's not a lot of time to tie up all the loose ends and give the characters the send-off they deserve. So things have to move fast. No time for detours or drawn-out drama. Everyone needs to get into place pretty quickly because the last chapter of Outlander is about to kick off, and it's bound to be packed with emotional highs, gut-punching lows, and probably one last major showdown before the credits roll. At the end of Season 7, almost every character is in a bit of limbo. Jamie and Claire are heading back to Frasers Ridge, hoping to settle into something close to normalcy, even though the Revolutionary War is creeping closer to their doorstep in North Carolina. They've got Fanny Pocock with them, and there's a pretty solid theory floating around that she might actually be their granddaughter, which would be a wild twist. Then you've got Brianna and Roger, who are sort of stuck too. By the end of the season, they don't really know where they stand or what's next. It seems likely they'll make their way back to Frasers Ridge in 1779 to reunite with Jamie and Claire. But knowing Outlander, that reunion might take a while. The show has a habit of stretching things out, especially when it comes to families finding each other again. That said, Outlander does have a knack for making those reunions worth the wait. One of the biggest themes in the series is separation and reunion. It's woven into the DNA of the show. The idea that no matter how far apart loved ones are, no matter what time period they're in, they'll always find their way back to each other. We've seen it over and over with Jamie and Claire. They've been ripped apart for hours, days, years, even decades, and every single time they claw their way back to one another. And it's not just them either. Brianna and Roger have had their share of separations too. In Season 7 alone, Roger ends up in 1739, leaving Brianna behind, and it's a whole thing. Even Brianna's been separated from her parents more than once, and every reunion feels like a major event. So, it's no surprise that the eventual moment she sees Jamie and Claire again in Season 8 is shaping up to be a real tearjerker. It's been 5 years in the story since they last saw each other, so the emotions will be running high. But here's the catch. There just isn't time this season to drag that reunion out. Normally, the show would put them through some epic journey full of danger and setbacks, just to underline how far they'll go to be together. But we already know they'd move heaven and earth for one another. We've seen it again and again, so doing that again now, with the clock ticking, might actually be more frustrating than rewarding. Honestly, if Brianna and Roger spend the entire final season trying to get back to Frasers Ridge, only to show up in the last episode or two, it's going to feel like a letdown. Sure, it could build tension, and that's something the show often leans into more than the books do, but I'd rather skip the unnecessary stress. Let them come back early on, settle in, and let us see what life could actually look like for them after everything settles down. A taste of peace before the curtain falls, especially since there's a whole bunch of other things we want to see before the series wraps up. One of the most intriguing storylines is tied to a mystery involving Claire's long-lost daughter, Faith. Brianna doesn't even know that Claire was shot during the Battle of Monmouth, or that she and Jamie took in Fanny. She's totally out of the loop on all of that, which includes Claire's belief that Faith, her baby who was thought to have died, might have actually survived. That's a huge revelation, and Brianna's reaction could bring a whole new dynamic to the story. Now, Brianna's logical. She's not one to buy into something without evidence, But even though she's a bit of a skeptic, she's also seen with her own eyes that time travel is real and there are forces in the Outlander world that can't always be explained by science. So she might end up helping Claire figure out how to confirm whether Faith actually lived. That could launch a brand new adventure, something the books haven't covered, which would be exciting for book fans and new viewers. But again, this only works if Brianna gets back into the story early. The sooner the better. And speaking of emotional moments, Season 7 quietly dropped a pretty big Easter egg involving Frank Randall, Claire's first husband. He's been gone since Season 3, but Episode 15 slipped in a subtle appearance during the intro scene. Each episode usually starts with a short symbolic moment right after the title sequence, Sky Boat Song, and this time it showed a man and a young girl at a museum looking at a painting of Molly Pitcher at the Battle of Monmouth. It was subtle. Faces weren't shown, but if you know the show, you could tell it was Frank and young Brianna. It was a flashback, likely to a time when Frank took Brianna to visit the France Tavern Museum in New York, where that painting is displayed. But in the Outlander version, the painting is altered. It shows Jamie at the cannon and Claire treating the wounded. That little tweak is a clever way for the show to suggest that Frank knew more than he let on. He must have seen the painting and recognized Jamie and Claire, realizing that they had somehow gone back in time and become part of history. In the books, Brianna eventually finds clues that Frank left behind, revealing that he'd pieced together the whole puzzle. He knew Claire would return to Jamie. He understood more than he ever told her. But the show hasn't really had the time to go deep into that plot line, so this little visual callback feels like a quiet acknowledgement. A he knew moment without spelling it all out. Interestingly, Tobias Menzies, who played both Frank and the villainous Blackjack Randall, hasn't been back on the show since Season 4. He was pretty firm about not returning, so whoever played Frank in that Season 7 clip wasn't him, but the sentiment was still there. It was a thoughtful nod, a reminder that Frank's legacy still lingers even after all this time. And it's not just about the past. There's chatter that Season 8 might circle back to Frank in a more emotional way. Diana Gabaldon, the author of the Outlander series, has mentioned that the final season of the show won't match her books exactly, but it will incorporate pieces of the 9th book and the upcoming 10th one. That opens the door to a lot of possibilities, including one heartbreaking death that might just pave the way for Frank to return in some kind of vision or dream. We already know that the final season is going to hit hard. It's going to be emotional, maybe even devastating. So using that as a way to bring Frank back into the story, especially as someone who shaped Brianna's entire identity, could be a powerful move. It's been 8 years since we've really seen him, and even though Tobias Menzies might not come back, the idea of Frank still carries weight. So what's clear is this. Outlander Season 8 has a lot to juggle. It has to wrap up a massive story, give characters satisfying conclusions, maybe drop one or two last surprises, and still hold on to the emotional heartbeat that's made the series so special all these years. And the only way to pull that off is by skipping the drawn-out storylines and getting straight to the heart of things. No more slow-burn reunions, no more endless delays. Let's bring the family back together fast, dive into those big emotional arcs, and give Outlander the ending it truly deserves. Because when a show has carried us through centuries of history, heartbreak, and healing, well, it's only fair that it goes out with just as much heart as it had when it all began. And that's what we have to say about Season 8. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.